Woohoo! We are live. Happy Friday. This is going to be a really fun episode. I might say that every time. But we have two really amazing guests that I'm also super happy to reconnect with because we all used to work in Vegas together. And now we're back, all doing our own thing, not working in TV anymore. I think this means we've made it, right,
We
guys?
made
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we made it. And by the way, we worked in Vegas together, not in one of the casinos for people who
Oh,
don't
yeah.
live in Vegas. Like there's other industries in Las Vegas other than the casino industry.
Yeah, I
We
think
were in
that's
TV
probably an
together.
important note. Even though we were working in the middle of the nights, we were not in a strip club. We were at a TV station. It was all normal. Clothing was on. All good.
But
So I want
equally as
to.
crazy. You got equally as crazy with good stories or bad stories, depending.
Right.
Yeah. Wasn't it always interesting too when we worked overnights when you had like gas up in the early morning or something, like the people you would see in Las Vegas at gas stations at like 2:30 in the morning? It's a unique cross section of humanity. And it's just, if you ever get the chance to do it, you got to experience that for yourself.
Oh, totally. My move was always to go to the In-N-Out like at 11 p.m.
Yes.
right as it closed on my way to work.
Oh yeah.
That was the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just across the strip. Yeah. Oh, boy.
Exactly. It's the best breakfast at 11 p.m. So we all lived very healthy lifestyles. So we can start there. And let me now introduce what Todd and Yasmeen are up to now. They have launched HQ, a communications consulting firm helping professionals, politicians, and organizations refine messaging and delivery outside of traditional marketing. HQ coaches professionals to be more effective communicators in highly visible and crucial moments. They help clients acquire and improve the skills needed for speeches, presentations, social media, podcasts, and pitches, live streams like this. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you
Clearly,
so
we have
much.
to do well on this podcast since we're selling
pressure's
our
on,
services
guys.
to make other people look good as well.
Right. This will be like a testament to what you guys do. So I guess start with the backstory. And Andy, I promise we won't make you like
I
our
know. I'm
fourth wheel.
sorry, Andy.
I know.
It's okay.
I just said at some point, I was like, I got to say hello to Andy. We said hello to Andy before we went live, but
Abby was on
officially-
vacation the last 2 weeks. I've had the stream to myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
I'll be the quiet producer.
Well, Andy always comes out with the best questions that I don't write for him, so prepare yourselves. But I think what'll be important is first to know, how did you guys end up coming up with this idea? Tell us the background on how HQ came to be.
Sure.
Yasmeen, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was the morning show breaking news anchor in Chicago, and Todd and I would still stay in touch, and we would share stories here and there and talk about what's going on in the news industry and things along those lines. And then when I got out, I started working for the city of Austin and still staying in touch with Todd and talking about how much people outside of news don't understand, first of all, how news works. I was in a meeting one day and they're like, oh, it's 4:58. We need to get this out before the 5 o'clock news. And I'm like, honey,
that ship has sailed.
that ship has sailed. That was hours ago. So just that insight knowledge into, getting stories out there, developing those relationships with reporters, and really even outside of just media, how to tell a good story is at the base of what we did as journalists, right? We want to make it seem like we're not lecturing you. We're just talking to you. Hey, did you know this happened? And it's a little bit of a battle. It's funny talking to other people because they're like, I want to appear intelligent and well-spoken, and I'm like, that's all fine and dandy and lovely, but if nobody finds it interesting or you're talking above people, your message is getting lost. So trying to battle that. So we thought, let's venture off on our own.
Yeah, we were just like, talking to even, especially with our news background and the news business in general. And Abby, as you know, you have plenty of scars and war stories yourself. It's just, between the schedules and the demands, it's a tough business. Our hats off, obviously, to all our friends and coworkers who are still, fighting the good fight. But, Yasmeen and I would just start saying, okay, what can we do that's ours? And how can we use our skill set and apply that to the business and professional world? in a way that maybe not a lot of people are doing. And so that's why we came back to this idea of, fact-based storytelling and applying that to content that people are trying to put out there, whether it's in the form of speeches, pitches, presentations, even social media posts. The idea of being authentic and being real and conveying what you're about, what your company is about, is something that I think we're adding to this space that we don't see a lot of it. I was thinking of, you guys remember, Steve Hartman, the CBS correspondent. He does On the Road, but he had a segment. This is now I'm kind of dating myself. Years back, where he would randomly pick a town in the United States generally, and then he'd go through the phone book and just pick out a random name. And it was like something about like everyone has a story. So I think it was a title. I might be getting that wrong. But basically, he'd track this person down, he'd talk to them, he'd interview them, and he'd find a compelling story. And I think the lesson for us and the lesson we try to apply to clients is that you may not think your story is interesting, but I guarantee you're just not thinking of it the right way. And you don't think it would be appealing to other people, but chances are, we could help find and help you craft that story that is appealing. So that's kind of where that was the genesis of our idea.
Right. And I think it makes total sense. Obviously, what you guys have done in the news is figuring out how do we tell the story in an interesting way and give the right information. So it's super interesting. I would think that a lot of people in your world don't come from a similar background. Am I right?
Yeah, we found a lot of people in this space come from marketing and public relations, and that's great. And they're really highly skilled, and we've collaborated with a lot of them. And but there are very few, if any, that really come from a true, heavy news background. I mean, Yasmeen and I have been in news for almost 40 years. Is that the number, right? We're at, I mean, combined. So
it's impressive, but also like, we've been around.
Impressive. You guys look good. Damn.
That fine line. Do we want to throw a big number out there, but also like, we've been doing this. Todd just said phone book. Do kids even know what phone books are anymore?
There might be some people watching this and be like, phone book. What?
Do they even still have
I feel
those?
like thank you for the compliment, by the way. I feel like since I've been getting normal sleep and normal hours, which something I've never had in but 28 years, I do feel like I've at least slowed down perhaps the aging process. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty wild. I know we've kind of been joking about the war stories from news, but for people who don't really know about this industry, like, can you guys share, Todd, what were your hours most recently? Or what were the craziest hours you guys have worked? Mine were probably 11 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah, right. That was my most recent tour duty was the morning show and at the ABC affiliate here in Las Vegas. And so I would get in, I was trying to erase it from my mind, but I think it was like a 2 or 2:30. I would get in. 3 o'clock I'd get in. I'd get up at 2. That's it. My alarm would go off at 2. And so from 2 to basically 12, I've got a kid, I've got a family. It's just, as you can imagine, it's hard. It's a hard schedule. It's a tough business, as we all know. But it's your passion. It's what we all have in our bones, and you try and do it. And then you get to the point where, for a lot of different reasons, you feel like, okay, here's the point where I've got to get off this ride.
Yeah, I was on the morning show as well. So around 2. Also, hi Andy. Just checking in.
Andy, you're gonna have to ask a question next. Okay.
I have one.
Okay, good.
But similarly, I would say actually, Abby, I think the producers had a rougher schedule than we did, and were making us look good at the same time. But the producers who came in at 11 p.m., 1 a.m., those like couple of hours when we were coming in at 3, that's a big difference. 3 o'clock was like almost sleeping in for a morning show shift. So hats off to all those producers out there who are coming in and doing all the work.
I think, Abby, I think we were talking about it too. Like, I think you broke down to me your hours as a producer, which I found this really depressing because you would start on like the same day your shift ended. So, you know, if
Yeah.
it's a Wednesday, your shift ends Wednesday at like 10 in the morning or whatever it is. But then your Thursday shift still begins on Wednesday, you know, at
Right.
11 o'clock at night. And that just, when someone broke it down to me like that for producers, I thought, oh man, oh, that's hard. That's tough.
Right.
No
It
joke.
definitely was tough. I mean, I'm glad we all get to sleep like normal people. We get to hang out with Andy. Andy, you got a question. Let's hear it.
You guys are going to be so impressed by my industry
All right.
lingo. So I've noticed that, well, it's been in the news that a lot of the big stations are talking about cutting their 10 o'clock p.m. prime time, and they're kicking that hour over to local stations. And our local affiliates in Denver, I prefer the NBC Fox combo in the morning. But last week they started moving all the way till noon. And so following even on social media, a lot of the anchors, they're talking about how that extra hour of the morning is making it so difficult because they're pulling up like the evening traffic guy to do 1 hour of 11 to 12. What is it like when you're getting into the station at 4:30 in the morning to have the prospect of having one more hour of news?
Daunting. I mean, I hear that. I think, man, as much as I love being in the news business, I don't miss that because it's, you know, for all the arrows that the media takes sort of in general, I'll just use that term. And a lot of it's justified, right? Like, you know, should not be above criticism, but, you know, people should know in the outside world at its core, people in newsrooms are good, hardworking people who care about the community, who want to tell interesting, compelling stories and want to be useful. But yeah, what's happening now in the industry is you're just seeing this massive expansion of news hours, but you're not seeing a massive expansion of news hires. You know, so they're trying to do, you know, the cliche more with less, and it's pretty exhausting.
So what happens with, I went to a school that has a really big broadcast program, and Washington State University, shout out.
Ooh.
I think our finest product other than Edward R. Murrow is Ana Cabrera on CNN. She was a couple years
Oh,
ahead of me.
nice.
Anyway,
Yeah, she's fantastic.
we also have a couple ESPNs, but
Don't make
anyhow,
me fight you from Syracuse, okay? with
Wazoo,
our
yeah.
alumni list.
those are my people.
I thought for a
So-
second you were going to go with Drew Bledsoe. I was like, oh, are we going in a sports direction here? What's
Listen,
happening?
that's heartbreak. That season when he was making 10 million and Tom Brady was making 500,000 on the bench and came in, and 20 years have gone by. Anyway, yes, Drew Bledsoe grew up an hour from my hometown. So in the era that we grew up in, I'm not going to identify how old I am, a little bit younger than you guys, but in the era we grew up in, if you wanted to be an anchor on a broadcast station, you were talking about coming out of school, doing some kind of PA work, and then maybe you're going to like Ketchum, Idaho for a couple of years, and then you're going to Bend, Oregon for a couple of years, and you're not sitting at a desk until you're in your like late 30s, early 40s. And then you had these really, like, especially evening anchors were kind of these journeyman employees that were in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And now it seems like maybe aside from the head anchor desk, everybody's in their 25 to 35 range. And so is the nature of people in the news, are young people cheaper? Is there just more inventory of these people? Because I know that it's still a pretty rigorous process to travel around the country and audition to be on news stations. But for somebody straight out of college to be maybe first or second step rolling into a mid-sized market like a Portland, Oregon, or a Boise, Idaho or something, that would have taken presumably 15, 20 years before, right?
That's exactly right. Also, Wazoo, my first market was the Tri-Cities. So just south of where you were, right by Walla Walla. So yeah, I started in market 121. Todd, you were Bakersfield?
My first market was Blue Ridge Cable in the Pocono Mountains, northeastern Pennsylvania, a sort of subsect, if you will, of the Scranton market. So, I mean, I grew up in literally a one stoplight town, Cananensis. Hey, Cananensis. Very rural section of northeastern Pennsylvania. At least it was very rural at that time. But yeah, you're right. And that path we've seen, that traditional, you know, path is being eroded as the landscape has shifted, you know, and that's just what these television stations in particular are having to deal with now, and that reality of, not being able to support the salaries that would come along with experienced anchors. You know, Yasmeen and I both have. She was in Chicago and Sacramento, and I was in Philadelphia for 15 years. And you know, typically, you're right. That's kind of what you'd have to go through in order to land like an anchoring job in like in my case in Las Vegas. I was both morning and evening anchor during my stint, but you're not going to see necessarily that demand of having the same sort of background to get into that chair, just because you know it's kind of the media world has gone flat. And you know, the internet, talking about disrupting things, the internet and social media really has really been a force in disrupting things. And that people online, they look at someone's blog and they might in their mind sort of give it the same weight as, you know, an article from the New York Times, right? I'm you know, being exaggerating here to make my point, but people don't no longer see, oh, it's CBS News, oh, it's ABC News versus it's, you know, so and so, you know, blog, or the XYZ report, you know, whatever it is. And that's really caused a lot of issues in the media world. And I think they're trying to, you know, do the best they can, but it's expensive, right? It's expensive to produce news. And I'm interested to see what the next 10 years in the news business will bring, because a lot of the numbers really indicate a hard road ahead.
Oh, totally. I mean, I remember like when I was still working at the station in Denver, they sat us down. They're like, "So no one's watching the morning news." And I was
We're
like,
putting on the
"Well,
show for our moms.
well, that's nice." Um,
Well,
so
it's
yeah.
also interesting because I've started watching the World News Tonight with David Muir, the ABC, because it's on Hulu. And they have the like 20-minute breakdown that I can watch the next morning, and I don't have to turn on the real TV because I don't have the real TV. So one
Same.
more question I have for you guys. It's not my last question, but the next question I have for you guys is, what about, and this kind of leads into what your business now does, what about when talent is representing themselves offline, because, or, you know, off the air? Because I've seen that this is a big thing, especially with these younger talent, that they're also spending those early morning hours recording TikToks and being personalities to try to draw people to the news. Abby knows I've got a bit of a crush on one of the meteorologists here in Denver, and she also has a hiking blog and is always posting about these clouds are going to make this weekend's hike different. And people get excited about that because you're learning something and
Andy, what
finding
if
a way
she's
to
watching this right
sneak
now?
in
She
value
probably
adds.
knows.
What's up? You know who you are. So anyway, what are the rules, and what are the things you guys are noticing about how on-air talent are representing themselves on social media? Because a lot of them don't have a blue checkmark TV account and a personal account anymore. They kind of have a fluid thing, and the stations are obviously okay with that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna date myself again. This feels like a theme throughout this podcast. But back in my day, it was a very clear line. I am a journalist at all times, and social media, at the grocery store, whatever it is, and I should be a positive reflection of my station, right? And just my professionalism and journalism in general. But I would say now that there are so many more influencers, and social media has such a big impact on how news is consumed, how everything is consumed. I think that those lines are becoming a little more blurred, because stations really, they want you to be active on social. They want you to be likable and authentic and all of those things, which is great. But you're also, I think, on a fine line, is what you're projecting, because in all of our contracts, I want to say, we have a morality clause, right? So anything the station sees as that's not how we want to be seen in public, they could, in theory, take up that clause, and you could be let go. And in your mind, it could be, you know, innocent, and I was just being me. But how is someone else seeing that? So it's definitely getting more complicated, I would say, because, again, back in the day, that was not necessarily a thing.
You know, and I think too, it's, you know, you could sort of draw the same line with with content, right? Just in general, not only in the news world, but you see it now, like with, I'm thinking Steakum, right? On their Twitter account for Steakum, and the way they get, I don't know if you guys follow them sometimes, but they get into politics and they get into different social things that are happening out there. And we're seeing a lot of those lines being blurred, right? And whereas before it was a kind of traditional, everyone had their lanes, that's all kind of, slowly eroding. And I really would not be surprised if you have pretty soon, influencers giving you the news in some version, like that. So they would almost flip the script. So as opposed to the news people trying to be more like influencers, you might see more of the influencers now injecting news, because that's kind of where the expectations now lie with the audience. They don't necessarily want the traditional, guy in the suit and good evening, everyone. They don't, it's kind of, you get the feeling that we're moving past that. What's next is not really well defined. But I think to your point, Andy, as you see people in traditional media sort of open up their lives to try then to interject what they do professionally, we're seeing that across all formats and through all kinds of professions.
And even like more recently, Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, we're seeing these big name anchors talk about their opinions sometimes on the air and call people out. And listen, everybody loves someone getting called out. It's good TV. And I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with what they're saying, but 10 years ago, I can't imagine giving my opinion on anything on the desk. Like that would have been unheard of. So it's definitely, they want anchors to be people. But yeah, it's definitely a fine line. What if you share too much or your opinion goes too far? You're definitely risking your reputation, your job in theory, at a certain point, I think.
And Abby, I think you know that, and Yasmeen, we certainly know that. Like, how many times did we kind of in the industry would look at someone else's, post, and they're like, I'm like, what? What am I looking
come
at
to mind?
Here?
Yeah.
Well, it's fun
Abby,
when
I
they
know
do.
you know what we're talking about.
But,
oh my God, yeah.
They generate a lot of following, and for news executives, it's like moths to a flame. They cannot look away. They feel like, oh, this person has 50,000 followers or whatever it is, and they got X amount of hits because they posted themselves at a nightclub or at a beach, and dressed in a way that's appropriate for that setting, but
Todd,
maybe
you're
not
my
necessarily.
favorite person right now.
Yes.
We all know
I'm being
what
very
photo
delicate in my descriptions
we're
here, but
talking
we know what
about.
we're saying. Yeah.
Hi, Andy. Just checking on you.
Yeah.
It's
Andy,
fun
you're
when
on.
it's
Join the
fun when they do the
And-
things like beyond the I'm at a charity burger event tonight. They like these there's 2 or 3 gals at this one station that I watch that do like a live stream on each one of their TikToks every morning while they're in the makeup chair, and they like look over and talk at each other, and there's this whole interactive thing. But one of them does this thing that's kind of like the mean tweets on the Jimmy Kimmel show.
Oh, yeah.
And she'll read the emails that she gets from people that say that she has ugly knees. And like, it's just this really funny thing because all of these like really conservative old women from who knows, Weld County or something, Weld County made national news for being a weirdos in Colorado. But anyway, it also smells really bad like cows up there.
Now we're gonna get hate mail. Don't do
Nah,
that.
it's cool. But she reads all the time these things people send her, like she needs to cover her shoulders more. And it really garners that empathy piece. And like Todd, you were alluding to, some of these talent have a larger social following than the station might. In markets like Los Angeles and Chicago, oftentimes they are like big time celebrities. And social media has taken it to another level because some of them are writing books, creating courses, and the lines are starting to blur with. I was going to ask you guys about your joint exodus from your news stations, but since we do have limited time, you talked about the genesis of your business. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the day in the life is like and kind of the core use case of what sort of clients you work with and what you do for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, as we've seen people in news business kind of open up what we're seeing now is people in the professional world starting to open up. We're not quite at the point where we see, the CEO of, IBM, TikToking about their morning hygiene routines, but to that, but we are sort of going there, and that's what we saw for us as a space where, we could help these companies, navigate that and figure out, well, how are we going to do this? Not just in social media, but in other things that they do outside of traditional advertising. So, a day for us starts virtually. I'm in Las Vegas. Yasmeen's in Austin. We meet every morning. We go over our list of potential clients, and we send out our emails, and we're sitting there just trying to convey what we do. And it's funny, a lot of people get it. We thought, man, we're going to really have to kind of explain kind of what we're doing, but it's amazing that we're in this space where you just say, we're helping people refine their messaging outside of traditional marketing. And that includes presentations, pitches, and speeches and podcasts. And they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Because they're already moving there. They already realize, it's not just about buying in ad space. It's not just about trying to make a commercial. There's this whole other wide swath that's opening up, and it's been fun. It's been great to kind of hear that. Now the process of trying to convey what we've learned to them, that's been interesting for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we have a huge appreciation for what you guys do, because we're kind of in these like similar but not competing spaces of, we also help people figure out what is your call to action, what is the story you want to tell on this podcast, in this course, and how are you going to actually get out there and do it. So you guys can't get rid of us anytime soon, I think is one of my points. But I think also I'd love just if you guys would share maybe a little bit of advice just while we have another minute, for people watching, what are some of the keys that you guys see in terms of effective communication, whether it's, TikTok or a TED Talk, what are some of the keys to being an effective communicator? That was a good little thing. I just made that up.
I think, I might steal that.
Go
TED
ahead.
Talk to TikTok.
I don't know. I think my lawyer already trademarked it. So.
Well, I would say just being authentic. Andy, you spoke a little bit about that vulnerability in just talking about some like criticism, and you just become a person. Like I remember I woke up one morning and someone was like, your head is too big for your body. And I'm like, oh, all right, it's 7 a.m., but sure. Thank you for that. And just being able to relate to people, I think that is what people remember. And that's something that we talk about in like media training and part of our courses is people will remember how you made them feel before they remember the information that you're relaying. And that will help with sales. That will help with networking. That will help with really everything. If somebody is able to connect with you because you're authentic and you're able to tell your story in a real way, I think really will help your business in all facets. Assets?
Both, perhaps.
Can we edit this? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know what I'm trying to say.
We're still live.
Yeah.
We're live.
Yeah, I think
we'll do it live.
Yeah. One of the all-time greats outtakes. That was really just phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, because also too, it's about empathy, right? And I think we've heard this word empathy for so long. Well, what does it mean? Well, what it means in terms of content providers in all forms is that your audience is now different, right? So it used to be the audience was kind of just they expected a certain wall, between you and them, and now that wall is disintegrating, and what they have is empathy. So if you come across and you're able to sort of present yourself for who you are, you'll have that empathy now from an audience. And I think that dynamic has really changed pretty drastically in the past 5-10 years.
It's funny because it seems like one of the most important places in storytelling right now. Everybody wants to be a branding expert this year, and everybody wants to talk about personal branding, but then personal branding for CEOs and entrepreneurs and whoever. That one sentence line on your LinkedIn account is like not only extremely valuable, but people put, I'm a coach, author, podcaster, community organizer, event planner. And that means nothing to me. But when they put,
Andy, I feel personally victimized by you.
no, you redid yours.
That's
But it's like
fired.
everyone says that. So just because you have a podcast, that doesn't mean you're a podcaster, or that doesn't mean it's your primary thing. There are people who do it for a living. But if you say coach for women who want to make authentic change in their community, that's very specific. And that is telling the story of who you are. I've always been really irritated when people call me a serial entrepreneur, because that doesn't give anyone any indication of what any of my businesses do. And sure, maybe I work in a couple different industries, but it should be like Andy, the brand guy, or Andy, the media guy, or something, because it just means nothing to me to say, I understand this person does a lot of different things. Abby is a matchmaker. She works in several industries connecting people, and she is fundamentally a connector. That is what it comes to her personality. It comes to her CV. It's her. That's what her identity is. She might want to stop doing that one day.
I guess that is my identity now. So it's out in the world.
I'm planting steaks today.
I guess so. I was going to say, we always like to end, obviously, with an opportunity for you guys to plug where people can follow you, find you, contact you to work with you guys. Let us know all the places.
You know, I'm going to let our IT department handle that question.
Todd, I'm like tempted to out
Yasmeen
you right
Hassan
now.
is the IT department of HQ. She has all that information. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, wait, Yasmeen, what? Where are we? She's like, Todd, I sent you this email like 2 weeks ago.
Todd is using Bing. Todd, I'm outing you right now. He is
Don't
using
judge.
I Binged it. And I'm like, that's not a thing, Todd.
Oh my God.
They got up to they got up to 11% market share at their peak.
I feel like we need a part 2 where we just have an intervention. Yeah, do we just have an intervention where, Todd, we get you on Google?
Yes.
Have you heard of it?
Let's come
But see,
back.
this is what I'm talking about. Now your audience has empathy for me. They're like, oh, Todd, see?
They like you. They'll go to your MySpace account if you tell them, but you have to tell us where to find you. The question's still out.
Yeah, it's Todd Quinones at AOL.com, by the way.
Oh, my dad still has an AOL account. But in all seriousness, we are HQ. It is spelled HCUE-LLC.com. H for Hassan, Q for Quinones, but Q spelled out as in Q you're on. We thought it was clever, but no one really knows what that story is. But that's who we are. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Our names are kind of weird, so we should be easy to find.
I love it. I didn't know that story behind the name. Yeah. I was just thinking HQ, like Q, on air, all that. So I love it.
Thanks.
See, as a matter of fact, well, I have to, we do like when we post our videos online, we'll have in the name box, and it's so tiny, no one can see it. But, you know, we think we're so clever because for Yasmeen's box, it's H. And then in my box, it's QCUE.
Ooh. I like it.
We'll leave you with that little nugget, that little Easter egg, I guess.
Oh, wow. I hope people watch till the end because that was worth it. So. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It was also great to just reconnect, and I can't wait to see where HQ goes. We can't wait to be along for the ride with you guys. And if you are watching still, reach out to these two. They have some good stuff to say.
Thanks, guys. This was so fun.
Yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate it, and wishing you guys all the success in the world as well. And we'd love to see a part 2 where maybe I graduate from AOL and Bing. Stay tuned.
Where we discuss Bing and Google.
Sounds good. Have a good Friday, everybody.
All right, take care.